This episode of the Boonie Breakdown podcast may include discussions around topics such as sexual assault, domestic violence, stalking, physical violence, and emotional abuse. I acknowledge that the content may be difficult in this episode, so I'm encouraging you to prepare for yourself, your safety, and well-being. If you need to check out this episode and join us next week, I encourage you to do so now. Hey guys, it's your girl Boonie, and you're listening to episode 168 of the Boonie Breakdown podcast, your source for all things responsible and ratchet. All right, welcome to this week's episode. As you heard from our disclaimer, the topic in this week's episode can be a bit heavy and hard for some people to listen to, but it is such a needed and necessary conversation. And I'm so thankful that our guest, Ambra Washington, was so courageous and brave and agreed to come on to the podcast to talk about her life and what she went through and how she survived. She is a self-taught makeup artist and an advocate of self-love and encouragement. But in this episode, she sits down with me and she talks through how she was able to escape an abusive relationship. So yes, we will be talking about domestic violence in this episode. And again, Ambra was so gracious and courageous in how openly she was willing to discuss what she experienced and how she is now that she's on the other side and she is a survivor. So please stick around for this important conversation. I also want to acknowledge right now, again, if this topic is triggering or traumatic for you, please do not feel like you need to listen to this episode. We can catch you next week, but I do hope that most of us will be able to sit through. I even talk about my own struggle with this topic in the conversation with Ambra. So I understand, no need to apologize, but I do hope that if you're able to, you will stick around for the conversation. All right, let's hop into my pick of the week. So you guys know I love Eddie Murphy. Like, he is like everything to me. One of the few people left in my 80s trilogy because MJ and Whitney are gone. So pick of the week this week is Coming to America. Yes, the sequel. I was just so shocked that people really had expectations that a movie was going to beat the classic that we've had with us for 30 years now, right? Like, that was not my expectation. I watched it, ready to hate it, and I will say I enjoyed it. I thought there were parts that were laugh out loud funny. Every time Wesley Snipes entered the room made me crack up laughing. I think like the last 10 minutes of the movie was like pure joy. No, it's not better than the first one. No, I didn't think it was going to be better than the first one. Is it a classic? No, but I thought it was a solid follow-up for a movie that we've had for 30 years and that we love. So I enjoyed it. Again, I don't think it'll be one of those things where I'm like, oh, let me turn on Coming to America. But yeah, I think they did the movie justice. I like the reverence that they gave to the first movie. So yeah, overall, I thought it was solid. I don't have nothing bad really to say about the movie. So let me know. I haven't even talked about it, but I just really felt like I love Eddie fucking Murphy and, Edward Regan Murphy. I love him. And I felt like this was totally deserving of a pick of the week highlight. All right, we're going to hop into housekeeping now. So the feedback from episode 167, The Quest for Black Liberation with Nika Namdi and Ray Baker. A totally sophisticated episode. I got so much good feedback on this. I was so nervous. I'm always nervous when I deviate really far away from the ratchet because I know that's what you guys love, right? So whenever I go really serious or, really responsible, I get afraid sometimes, but I always love that you guys are receptive of those episodes too. On Talk to Boonie Tuesday on Instagram, I had kind of asked a few questions about, one of them was, are you afraid to speak out on racism? And I didn't share all of the results, but a few of them were good. A few people said some of the reasons that they're afraid to speak up is becoming a target, facing retaliation. Someone said that my brand would be canceled, pushback from other Black people that I'm rocking the boat and making it uncomfortable for us all. One person did say, not a motherfucking one. I'm going to speak out on racism every time I see it or feel it. And then I thought this was another interesting perspective. Someone said, the one reason why I don't speak out all the time is that I'll be expected to do it every time. But if I don't, I'm worried no one else will. It's such an awful catch-22. So yes, I'm glad that you guys really enjoyed. If you have not listened to that episode, I encourage you to go back and check it out. Episode 167. And it is dope. Also, if you're not over in Ratcheteer Gang over on Patreon, you really should join us, because you know what happened this week? We got a group chat. That's right. If you are a Patreon subscriber, then we now have a group chat that we pop off. We share memes. We talk shit. It's just fun. There also, each week there will be a new thread about each episode, and it was nice to hear the feedback again as well there. One person in Patreon Gang did say about the episode, it was an awesome episode. It made me feel like I was sitting back with my mom talking about how we need to keep the revolution going. So we have a good time over there. Some fun things to come. It just started this week, but if you want to be a part of Boonie's group chat, yes, you can chat directly with me via text message. You have to join Patreon. You can head on over to patreon.com/the Boonie Breakdown and sign up for one of the tiers. And we have a good time. All right. And if you just want to tell me how great I am, you can do that as well. I got another great review over on Apple Podcasts. So thank you for the 5-star review. This one said, from No Cut Card 2, I like this show, 5 stars, and Boonie got a bubble back there. See, the 5-star reviews, you guys don't have to overthink them. It doesn't have to be a lot. I get ones like that all of the time. All right. So if you want to do that, you listen on any Apple device, go into the Apple Podcast app, hit those 5 stars, and leave us a 5-star review. Also, be sure to follow us on all social media at The Boonie Breakdown on Instagram and Facebook, just at Boonie Breakdown on Twitter. All right. And when sharing this episode and putting it in your Insta stories, or you're putting it on Twitter, be sure to tag us, and also use the hashtag The Boonie Breakdown, the hashtag PODIN, PODIN. So that is it for me, guys. So let's get ready to break it down. All right, guys, it's your girl Boonie, and this might be one of the most serious episodes that I've ever done on this podcast, but I am looking forward to this conversation, and I would like to walk Miss Ambra to the podcast. Hey, girl.
Hey, Boonie. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
You know, living, staying black.
That's all you can do these days, and stay COVID free.
And stay COVID free. Absolutely.
I really cannot believe that we're coming up on a year of this.
A year. And you know what's funny is that I moved back to Maryland the week the world shut down on COVID. So I've literally been in COVID the entire time in Maryland, coming back home and not seeing a person, a friend, nothing.
It's wild.
Crazy.
And here's the thing, you said that and I saw that on Instagram and I was like, that's a peculiar time to decide to move back across the country.
And it was such good timing because it really went with my instincts. I came home for Christmas and was like, I think I'm ready to come home after almost 8 years. And lo and behold, 30 days later, world global pandemic.
I can't believe it was 8 years because I was at the going away party.
No, you were. That put some things in perspective. That was almost 8 years. I was shy 8 years by 2 months. Yeah,
that was 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So I want to first say, before we dive into this,
sure.
I want to say thank you for you doing this conversation, for being courageous and brave, to share your story with others. And I am so thankful and glad that you are one of the women who was able to survive, leave, and now I hope you're thriving.
Absolutely. It's been a journey, but absolutely. I love being able to be at this point in my life, at this stage in the journey, a resource or at least a beacon of inspiration and hope for those who have experienced the same thing.
On January 17th, you dropped a video on YouTube, and
Yeah.
I did not see anything. I got a call from my mom who follows you as well.
We love mama.
And she's like, "Oh my God, have you watched this?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "No, I haven't." And I have spoken on this before. My mom was a survivor of domestic violence as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I have not experienced, any domestic violence in any relationships that I've been in, but
Right.
domestic violence still triggers me from childhood.
Yeah.
And so I messaged you. I said,
Yes.
I can't watch this, but
However,
I'm so proud of you for sharing your story. I am so happy you're survived and you're still here.
yeah.
What made you want to finally come forward and share what had happened to you?
So I pride myself on being a spiritual woman, God-fearing woman. And honestly, my sleep was being interrupted. What I
Mm,
mean by that is I wasn't getting the recommended 8 hours, which I know, parents or working individuals, that could be a struggle in itself. But it was at a point where I was waking up every 2 hours for about 2 weeks in a row. So I'm dead dog tired. I'm trying to figure out what my dreams and trying to interpret what they meant and just kind of repetitively having the same type of visions in my dreams. And it wasn't a situation where it was like I missed that ex individual or I missed that
mm-hmm.
life, but more it is time. You need to
Yes.
say something. More men and women are hurting. Children are being affected. And I felt, and this is like something that come from, just growing up in the church and the influence of my mother on me and my spiritual walk was God will interrupt your dreams to communicate with you.
Ooh, yes.
Yes. And as I was telling you before we got on today, I'm always with my children. I'm a single parent of two boys, and they are, if it's not one, it's the other. I am never alone, maybe in the shower. And it was this particular day where they were both gone at the same time. And it was just me and my dog and my camera. And I said, okay, God, you've created this window, a good chunk of time to gather my thoughts, to collect my words and just record. There's nothing scripted. It was just speak from your heart. If it makes sense and it's just not like jumbling of words, then release it. And that's what happened that day.
Yeah, I finally did watch the video.
Yeah.
I did it in two parts.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It's
I was
long.
like, yeah, I was like, but I had to watch it. I was like, I can't not have you come on for this conversation and not know fully your story, especially since you shared so much.
Yeah.
Um, and wow, I mean, that was I just was like, wow, I'm so happy that you're here able to say those words, and
Absolutely.
hopefully change someone else's life.
Or
And
at
so,
least encourage them, push
yes,
them to say, like, there's light at the end of the tunnel.
yeah, I always, you know, the conversation around domestic violence sometimes lacks nuance, especially for
Mm,
people who aren't aware of signs of that lead to
right.
domestic violence, who've never
Right.
experienced it firsthand, secondhand, whatever. And I'm going to ask you this:
Sure.
Did you feel in hindsight that your abuser uh, started the abuse before the first time they hit you?
Listen, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, and that was a part of my journey is to really start forgiving myself because God kept showing me over and over again. Within the first month of us dating, he slept with another woman. And in that time, mentally, it was, he doesn't know how to love. I need to show him how to love. He's just self
Mm,
sabotaging. I can show him what it's like to be in a healthy, thriving, unconditional love relationship. And as you mentioned, in hindsight, now looking back at that, he told me he cheated on me as a form of grooming, if you really look
Yep.
at it. It was an opportunity for him to see where my alliance was, to be quote unquote vulnerable. He didn't have to tell me, but I'm telling you because it's all a tactic of manipulation.
Oh.
Especially when someone is myself. I just moved across the country. My children were 8 and 1.5. I moved to Seattle, Washington by myself to start a new career. Didn't know anyone, so really trying to cultivate these relationships. And me being a lover of love, being a damn Libra, got completely swept up, um, and instantly said, "Well, let's move forward." But
Yeah.
but looking back at it, the woman that I am today, I mean, come on, we already know. Like, he wouldn't have made it in another 30 days.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think listening to your video, the one thing I kept hearing you say, um, tied back to conditioning. You saw
Mm-hmm.
your parents growing up with this, in your
Yes.
mind, this cookie cutter, picture
Mm-hmm.
perfect relationship, and you're trying to find that yourself.
Absolutely.
And I will say some of the things you just said, for an abuser, you were like a prime candidate. You're
Mm-hmm.
already far away from family, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thousands of
Yeah.
miles away.
Thousands of miles. Yeah.
I mean, it was just, and that, like you said, it was the grooming. Oh, she stayed. I told her this and she stayed.
Yeah.
And that was probably his game on. All right, game on. Let's go.
Absolutely. And it just evolved from there. Yeah.
Yeah. When do you think back? Because you said on there you met him online,
Yes.
and I don't want because I thought my first thought you said your friend set up your profile. At any point, did you feel like you felt some type of way about your friend? Like if she had not done this.
Oh, that is a good question, Boonie. Wow. No, I actually never put the blame on her. And what's interesting enough is that she reached out to me maybe a couple of weeks ago, like, "Oh my God, how you been?" Like, whether or not I know if she's seen the video or not, because we were more associates,
Okay.
to give it some weight to the relationship. But I never did, because I always looked at it, it was still my choice.
Gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
and she was just, being a girlfriend. So no, actually, no, I didn't. That's a good question though.
Yeah, because when I was listening, I'm like, that was my first thought. Like, you take on your guilt because you have your children and you felt like, how could I be doing this? But I was just wondering, at any point did you think, why did she put me on there?
Hmm.
Look, I'm
Yeah.
not going to say the app because I don't know if my attorney is going to get mad at me.
Okay, fair
But
enough. Don't.
but y'all can go listen to the YouTube video.
It's funny, when I said it, I was like, I'm not a big deal. They'll be fine.
Yeah. Look, Crystal might yell at me.
Oh yeah, don't look. I've known Crystal since I was 14 years old. She don't play.
She don't. Um, so it's so cliche because people are always like, you never know what people are going through,
Absolutely.
and you've built a pretty sizable following on
Yeah.
Instagram and on YouTube, myself included,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting here listening to the video like, oh shit, I remember the trip to Australia. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I remember. Like, even when you
Yeah.
said you moved, I didn't know why you were moving, but I was just like, that's a peculiar time to decide to move back home.
Yeah.
And so I felt like, and it's just me because who I am, and I know I'm sensitive to domestic violence. I'm like,
Hmm.
shit, you didn't see anything, Adrian. You didn't see anything. So like,
Listen.
how did you how did you deal with did you have to deal with that with people who are actually close to you who felt, how could they have not known?
Absolutely. And you know what? This is going to be funny, but um, I knew that once I dropped this video, there were things that even my son, who's about to be 17 years old, did not know. There's things that my parents did not know. There are things in my sphere of influence of people that did not know. My best friend did not know, because she ended up watching the video and calling me bawling like, I am so sorry. And I'm like, I have to allow the people who love me and care about me go through the process. I've had
Yeah.
2.5 years to cry, to therapize, to to go through the journey of really rebuilding who I am and identifying that woman and finding my voice again. Now I have to let those who love me process it because you're hearing it for the first time. I've been dealing with it
Yeah.
for the past 2.5 years. So yeah, I mean, my children's father called me crying.
Oh.
And that was really powerful. I mean, we've come a long way. And I told him then, I said, listen, we will always have love. We have two beautiful children together. And I understand that you will always have love for me because of that. And the relationship, I mean, I was with him for 11 years. So, him like, why didn't you tell me? Or, him saying, I love you and babe. And he's like, this is all, it's not deep, but just like, I do have love for you. And I told him, you even have to process this because your children was exposed in a sense. I mean, there was a
Yeah.
lot of covering up, but it was important for him to know that they were never touched. They were
Physically
never
harmed. Yeah.
physically harmed. Um, but you living under the same roof, you're gonna feel energies, right?
Yeah, and
So
I and
yeah.
and I was a child when my mom was in an abusive relationship, and I never once saw my mom physically abused.
Mm-hmm.
I remember hearing things when I'm asleep at night,
Yeah.
the arguments, the ruckus.
Yes.
I experienced other things that were abusive, but not her being physically abused.
Correct.
Um, and like you said, energy. Children are smarter than what we give them credit for. And
Absolutely.
so I
Absolutely.
do remember, and I have to talk this out in therapy myself as an adult because I had some level of guilt because I was able to have an out at times. So I didn't like going
Mm.
home. I would stay with
Ugh.
my grandparents, right? Like, I'm
Yeah.
not going there. And
Yeah.
so I carried this level of guilt because it's like, God, I left my mom and my little brother, there, and I found my safety net, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's such a complex issue that um I feel like people can't really grasp because in your mind you think, oh, someone hits you or smacks you or whatever, I'm out of there. And it's not that simple.
It's not that simple. And to even piggyback on what you said, that's what my oldest experienced.
Mm-hmm.
When we had a real open dialogue, his first response to me was, I just thought it wasn't my business.
Mm,
Um, or I always permitted him to go to his friend's house and spend the night. Now, whether or not it was his escape and oh my God, and then, in retrospect saying, oh, I left mom and my little brother home, not 100%. But I know that's a similarity that you guys share for sure.
yeah, that was the part that I had to unpack for me because it was like I said,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see the punches, I saw the aftermath.
Right.
So it was just like, you can connect the dots to know,
Absolutely.
what's
Absolutely.
happening. And I think sometimes the conversation around domestic violence can be ignorant because people don't have that knowledge. And the
Mm-hmm.
biggest way it comes out, it's victim blaming.
Yes.
Why would you stay? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm like, just can you speak to that? Like, um, did you have friends or family members who told you, like, once you disclose to them, because you share in your video, and I want to get to that part later, but
Sure.
you shared in your video having to make those calls to people who had no idea what you were going through,
Yeah.
for 6 years.
Yeah. Um, no one directly to me. If anything, I received a lot of comments under my video.
Oh, they were
So
disgusting.
yeah, they were rough. I mean, if I were to like break it into percentages, 90% of it was beautiful. It was support. It was, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're still with us. And then it was the 10% that was like, she needs to go to jail. Her children need to be taken away from her. That's what she gets. They're both toxic. So that's and that was like probably a little less than 1,000 comments at this point on that video, been viewed over 60,000 times. And I thought, okay, I need to remove myself away from this because when you put yourself out on a public platform like that, you have to be ready for all spectrums of opinions. So no one directly to me, but the things that people were saying, I said them to myself. So they were unaffected to me.
Mm.
Um, Why did I stay? Why would I put my children in that position? Why wasn't I strong enough? Why did I feel crippled by making those decisions much sooner? So no one directed me. Everyone that I called when I was in Australia, um, they manned up in a lack of a better word. Like everyone just kind of like, tucked it in for a minute to get me back to the States and get me back home and safe. And then it was just all support. It was never blaming. It was anger that they had to go through and me watch them go through it. So that was also painful to see, especially my
Yeah.
parents. Because my dad was in Seattle with the boys, and he had 17 hours, as you can imagine. Me being his little girl, I'm the youngest, and him taking 17 hours to process so that he didn't just blow his shit as soon as I got off the plane.
Right?
I remember telling my mother, like, Mom, can you please tell Daddy, don't machine gun me with questions. Like, I just need my dad. Like, I just need him to be like a trunk right now. And he amazed me. He exceeded my expectations. My father stepped up in such a way, and I've never received that type of backlash from my loved ones and friends.
Oh, I love to hear that. I
Yeah.
think what your leaving story,
Yeah.
wow, right? Uh,
I mean, could I
and
have written a book or what? I mean, or a movie ending or what? It was
I mean,
intense.
truly, because
It was intense.
so many times you hear the stories where people plot for months, years.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think even on your video, I read a comment where someone commented, "I'm still trying to find a safe way out." Broke my
Mm-hmm.
heart.
Oh,
And I'm just, it takes, because sometimes it's more danger in leaving
yes.
than
Yes.
it is in staying in your mind. So
Yes.
you don't have to, I don't want you to have to relive everything, but
Okay.
just share a little bit, because I guess my question to you was,
Yeah.
this just seems like an impromptu
Absolutely.
leaving, which
It
is
was. Yeah.
rare. I mean, that sometimes is rare for people in abusive situations. You're on vacation in Australia
Yeah.
and you're making the run of your life on a
Yeah.
17-hour flight.
Yes. Yes. So exactly what you said. It was very impromptu. I had no intentions of thinking that trip would be the end of my marriage, and that relationship. Um, I just knew that once it had crossed the line of, I mean, the assault was already happening, but then when,
Mm.
when knives got involved, and the shameless attack in front of, because the engagement that we've always had has always been behind closed doors. It's never
Yeah.
been in a public forum. It's never been in front of people.
And this one was
And this
so
was,
brazen.
yeah. So this one, because he did it in front of his family, I mean, his immediate family, it was the light bulb moment. And I said, wow, if he has no shame in front of people that you would typically hide things from, then it will never end.
Mm.
So, believe it or not, his sister helped me in this process. Um, she helped me escape in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
She held his passport hostage. She asked me how much time I needed, because I really feel, even though we don't have a relationship now, I really feel in her heart, she knew what he was capable of. And she knew that I was at least a decent enough person that I deserved the 5 days to get away, to have a 5 day start rather on him.
Yeah.
Um, she helped me find the hostel that I stayed at that evening. She helped me with the owners of that hostel get on that ferry back to that part of the country that I was staying. She gave me keys to her home so that I could stay there overnight before I got on my flight back to the States.
Mm.
Um, so I had no plan. I had I mean, I had the financial means, and I know that could be a point of contention for some people to be able to, like, I got to go, I don't have enough money to, but if I didn't have the money, I would have tried to figure it out, or I would have let more people in, because that would have never changed once we got back to the States, that behavior.
Yeah.
And in that evening, strangers helping me and having to call my family and wake them up 4 a.m. their time, because I'm so many hours behind them. And I knew in that moment that once I involved my family, they'll be my accountability partners. They will be the ones to be like, I wish you would go back to him. Because sometimes you don't, especially in, I don't want to generalize, but maybe in Black households, like whatever happens in the house stays in the house.
Yes.
And that mentality has followed me, even the way I rear my children, and we've made those adjustments. But in that moment, my mother even said, like, I should have never preached that to you because you would have been reach out to me. And then they go through their journey of guilt, So it
Yeah.
was very impromptu. It was now or never. And it allowed me to have space. It allowed me to have not only a 17-hour jump ahead of him, but also those 4 days, those 4 to 5 days to get out the house, to pack my whole house and move with 2 kids. So
Yeah, I kind of gave a little yes to the sister. Because then my other thought, then this is just me projecting and filling in head, like, because I'm like, did she feel some level of guilt too because she knew he
yes,
had been abusive to others, and this was her chance to make something right?
I
Um,
honestly believe that. I really,
yeah.
really do. Because there was contention between them afterwards, about her helping me. And they had a very estranged relationship. I mean, in the 6 years that we were together, that was the first time me meeting her.
Mm,
Um, and that was very telling because we had went on a walk and had conversations, and she's like, Ambra, I fly over Seattle every time to go to New York to visit family. How many times I could have stopped there, but I never did. So she had reasons why she didn't come and engage in that relationship with her brother. And I do believe that was a way of her saying, like, even though you may never hear from me again, this is my contribution to you getting away from this situation.
yeah, because that was totally my thought, was like, she must have, I mean, I think in your spirit, the type of person your family are, right? You might not have witnessed it with your own eyes, but you have some inklings, right? And I was like, oh, that was her way of making herself feel right. I'm glad she helped. I'm glad. I mean, it took a lot, because who knows if he was in some crazy state that, you're
Yeah.
leaving, he's enraged, right? He could have
Yes.
harmed others. But I was just listening to this, like, wow, an
Yeah.
international
Yeah.
impromptu, like,
Listen,
this
it
is
was
my chance
wild.
to flee.
It was
I mean,
wild.
that I'm also in the 6 years you were with him. Did you ever truly think he was going to change?
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't say yes. Only because, I mean, to kind of bring back the conversation from earlier, is that, I watched my mother be with my dad for 43 years, and he was no saint.
Mm-hmm.
The man that my father is now and who we love and know couldn't have been that same individual at 20 years old.
Yeah.
And, you kind of put in your years so that on the back end, you reap the reward, was kind of how my mentality was. This was the first man that I've dated, that had both parents in the household, had similar upbringings. Like, it's rare that parents are even still married, and let
Mm-hmm.
alone be together for over 40 years. So yeah, I did. I thought he would change just over time, and I had to put in the work to get the forever that I desired.
And with, if Australia did not happen,
I know.
that was my next like thought.
Yeah, that's a good question.
If Australia had not happened and you had assistance in leaving, when do you think? I know it's hard to project that,
I know.
but do
I
you feel
know.
like you were getting in a space where you were getting the courage to leave? Because I want to say you were, because even when you guys, I'll link the story in the show notes and you can go watch the full story.
Yeah.
But I feel you were getting a little courage yourself and pushing back, even in Australia, where you were like,
Hmm.
because people were there and you honestly did not expect him to act out in front of his family.
Right.
um but I felt like you took that moment, like, all right, I'm gonna have my moment here. Right.
Word.
And
Word.
so I feel like the snowball, the avalanche was building for you, that you were getting to that point. Now obviously you can't say in 6 months I was gonna walk out the door.
Hmm. Hmm.
But when you look right before that trip, in retrospect, do you feel like in your mind you were still in the hopeful state that things were going to change, or were you starting to be like, I have to figure a way out of this?
I actually was trying to figure a way out of it. I was already looking at apartments, excuse me, or even single family homes to rent. I remember sitting in my son's bedroom one night while he was gone and talking to my sister, like, this isn't going to last. Like, having those conversations, it really was just a matter of when. And believe it or not, and this is how God works, just in mysterious ways, I had just closed on maybe 3 different brand deals
Mm.
that really put me, that created a really good financial cushion right before we left to go to Australia. So, I mean, typically when you're moving, you're thinking first month, last month, and in Seattle, it's exorbitantly expensive. So you're looking at least having 10 grand before you can even get in somewhere.
Wow.
And I was preparing for that. Um, but everything hit in my bank account right before I left. And I thought, wow, not only is God making a way for me to remove myself from the situation, also giving me the financial means at the same time. So I was already leaning towards that. Okay, so how would this look? Would I leave when he's at work? Because I felt like if I tried to leave while he was there, he would antagonize the entire move. He would fight with the movers. He would be fussing with me about pots and pans on the way out. Or, like I just knew it would be, he would need to go out of town. He would need to remove himself for X amount of hours for me to truly
Gotcha.
get away. And because the codependency was so tight, it really didn't allow for any space. Like there was constant control in that relationship. So I really don't know what could have, should have,
Yeah, I mean,
if
yeah,
it
just
didn't happen.
speculation, but wow, I mean, like, what a way. But I was just curious, like, if in your spirit it was you were building to that, which like I said, I thought you were.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I remember like going on Zillow, like, okay, this is a bit much. Like, let me see. How can I do? Okay, so how much do I need to save? Or you know what I mean? Like I
because
was
that,
definitely there.
we chuckled there, but that is one of the arms of abuse, for
Mm-hmm.
especially for intimate partner violence, is that financial abuse, right?
Yeah.
They cut off all of these tenants and ways for you to escape. You don't have relationships with friends and family because they isolate you. Okay, well now I need you to completely depend on me. So some people, the abuse is financial. You don't have your bank accounts, you don't have credit cards, you don't have
Right.
access to these things, and so you might share one car because you can't
Right.
have your own car because you can't leave.
Right. Right.
And so
Right.
it's like the difficulty in planning an escape plan sometimes is insurmountable.
Yeah.
Um, I think listening to your video, the 2 points that I got enraged
Okay.
when you were fucking locked up. Oh,
I know, babe. I know.
that's the laws
That
around.
was rough. That was really rough. I mean, that was hard, right? I mean, growing up in Baltimore, we always kind of, I mean, at least I do. I joke with my friends. Either you can go left or you can go right.
Yep.
There's no in between. And fortunately, I went right. I went the way that was, I guess, quote unquote, ideal. Go to college, get a job, build a career, you build a family. Like I went that way. I didn't go the other way.
Mm-hmm.
So to be 35 years old and put in that position, that is the shame. That's the shame that I carried even more
And
heavily.
I don't want you to carry that shame because I
Yeah.
feel like that is where the laws really fail, domestic violence victims.
Right.
The police come out, you two
Yeah.
both walk out. You said you have black eyes. He has one
Yeah.
scratch from
Uh,
defense,
yeah.
and you go to jail.
Yeah. So in the state of Washington, um, visible harm is what would get you locked up. So he had a scratch under his right eye, versus my eye was closed shut. But being a dark skinned woman, it doesn't happen immediately, right? Like I'm not going to be
Mm-hmm.
black and blue until the next business day. And unfortunately, when I went in and I'm getting the mugshot done, I looked like a distressed woman, my weave everywhere, my face looking crazy. But when I woke up the next morning is when the guard was like, what the hell? She just was like, you
Wow.
didn't look like that last night. And when I went before the judge told me, you don't belong here. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with just, I mean, this is her livelihood. She's been around women who have been in trouble spaces, and that's just the life they live. Versus my ignorance, naive, never had been in trouble in my life, probably looked innocent in the face, baby face crying. She immediately let me go.
Yeah.
But it was the police officers truly just doing their jobs. And what really sucked was because I lived in a small town, Reese was best friends with the chief of police son. And he's the
Oh.
one who had to take me in. So
Oh
that was hard for
wow.
him. He cried. I never revealed that, but he cried. There's nothing he could do. There's nothing he could do because visibly I did not have a scratch under my eye. So that was hard. And then, you know, lying to my kids about it, lying to my family about it,
That's
lying to my
so.
job.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
Yeah. That part. I'm like the odd fucking audacity.
yeah, I know, right? But on the bright side, she drops everything, nothing on my permanent record. I've worked for Fortune 500 companies after. So it really, it just took a hit to my ego, maybe, definitely. You know, I mean, I'm
No.
raising brown boys in this age, and that's what I'm rearing them from. And then I get caught up in that madness. So that was
Yeah.
tough. That was tough.
Ugh. Okay. I want to talk about. I know we circled back because I forgot. I looked at my notes like,
Oh,
bitch,
no
you missed
worries.
that part. But I feel like we when we have these conversations, it's a lot about what happened, the abuse that the person endured,
Mm-hmm.
what led up to it, and then it's like, yay, you survived, you left, we love you. We
Yeah.
don't really talk about the after, the
Mm,
healing,
mm, mm, mm.
and so I just want to say, like, you had 5 days to plot your escape.
Yes.
How did you feel when you left? Was it relief? Did you go back? Because
Oh, yeah.
I know, like, we've seen this play out where my girl Rihanna was sitting courtside with Chris Brown after that
Yeah.
transpired.
Yeah.
We know people personally. We helped them leave, and then 2 weeks later, they're back at home, and you're like, "Girl, I
Yeah.
helped you. What's going on?"
Totally. Totally. Unfortunately, I can relate to that. So leaving felt like death. It
Mm.
felt like uh the same way I feel when a loved one passes away, that I'm extremely close to. It felt empty. It felt extremely overwhelming. My levels of anxiety, I lost 55 pounds in that process. 55 pounds.
Mm.
I'm 5'9". I had no business being 150 pounds. I was not America's Next Top Model. I had no business being that small. And it showed on my face. It showed in every walk of life. I mean, to a point where my child begged me to eat. So
Wow.
it really was a mind fuck too, in the sense of, why am I mourning this man who hurt me? Right?
Mhm.
Why am I crying and being devastated when he hurt me? Why do I still love him when he hurt me? Because you're immediately looking for an off switch. Same way you walk in a room, you turn to switch off, the lights off. And it just didn't happen like that. Um, I immediately went to therapy. I remember calling her from Australia
Oh.
and her trying to help me process that through customs, right? Because I was like sitting there for hours, and she she helped in a sense, but also it was very much a revelation for me that she wasn't the best suited for this.
Gotcha.
Um, what else? I mean, I had books, why this breakup was the best decision of your life, and those type of things. And I remember reading them every night, a chapter every night, to kind of ease the angst and the depression. I also read a lot up on narcissism and sociopath behavior and that divorce and what that looked like. I really tried to empower myself with as much information for those phone calls, because he still called. I didn't block him right away.
Mm.
For those moments of intimacy, because I didn't stop right away. I'm going to be honest. um, I was very much committed to the notion of, let's just take this time. Let's get the help that we need. Let's see if we can rebuild our relationship. I'm not going to lie to you guys. And it wasn't until I walked in on him fucking someone that he would remain the same person for the rest of my
Mm.
life. And that's when I filed. I filed the very next day for divorce. So even though you go through, this man hurt me, this man humiliated me, this man put me through so much, I've lost so much. Um, I still was fighting for my forever and what I thought that would look like. And in the beginning, it is not as simple as turning off a light switch. So it
Mhm.
definitely took, what I tell my girlfriends now, it's an addiction. It's no different than being addicted to a drug or alcohol, in the sense of, so that no one comes for me, in the sense of it takes a day at a time. I remember having a calendar and really like, day one, it's been 3 days since I
Wow.
felt it. It's 4 days. I'm 4 days removed. I'm 7 days. And there's times that I would backslide. And when I say backslide, I would look at his Instagram. I would start my clock over, because the notion of being clean of him is being completely clean of him.
Mhm.
Even though we never engaged in conversation after I filed for divorce, he tried multiple ways to get in touch with me, creating Instagram accounts and then emailing me. And then, I mean, it was just nonstop. He was like making it terrible, but I knew that every day that I did not communicate and I would remove myself away from it, I would get healthier. Yeah. And I probably got to like day 299 before I felt good.
Wow.
Yeah. I remember it being like almost 300 days before I was like, I can sleep. I don't eat weed. You know what I mean? Like, so,
Yeah, I've never heard someone say that one day at a time, but
yeah.
and I think to clarify, like, were you saying you're addicted to him? You were
Mhm.
addicted to the relationship, or like, what
I
did you
think I
think
was,
was the hold?
yeah, I think the hold was him. I mean,
Okay.
as I mentioned, being a spiritual woman, I think there was a strong soul tie. I think there was a heavy codependency amongst the both of us.
Hmm.
I was his everything. He wasn't the one that had all the friends, and he wasn't the one that is accustomed to traveling all over the world like I was. You know, that the girl I used to be in that sense. Um, so when so when all of that kind of relieved itself from, okay, I don't have to call this person during lunch at this particular time or call before I leave work in the car on the way home. Like, you have your routine with your people. You don't have the good morning, you don't have the good afternoon, you don't have the good evening conversation. So that was the stronghold of just that what I would consider normal in my life.
Okay.
That's what I was holding on to. And when I ended things and I filed for divorce, I personally took uh, a self care trip by myself. And that was super important because of the level of codependency. I needed to enjoy me. I needed to fall in love with me. I needed to like me again. And I took my first solo trip. And then from that moment, I started traveling heavily after that. And it
Hmm.
really was to put myself in a position to enjoy the life that God gave me in this second opportunity to live fully. So,
Yeah, I really like that because, like I said, I hadn't heard anybody explain it that way, and I appreciate your honesty in saying, "Look, I slipped up, I got
yeah,
Claudette,
yeah,
and was curious of what's going on over there."
yeah,
And again, after all of that, and you said you caught him in bed with someone
yeah,
else,
yeah.
like it's like Jesus.
Yeah. When will it end?
Like
Right. Like,
I
and
mean, he truly was who he was.
he was a narcissist, grade A, FDA approved.
Truly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And in that moment, I realized I obviously loved him more than he loved me, what I thought love was. Right.
Mhm.
And that I'm fighting for something that if both people aren't fighting for, then it's not worth fighting any longer. And that was my white flag, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier about negative or victim blaming. His mother did that to me.
Mm.
His mother victim blamed me. She knew her son was abusive. She admitted it to me the first time that I ran away for a week. And instead of her holding her Caribbean son accountable, and that's important to say, um, she told me that my marriage was poisoned from the beginning.
Oh.
And I said, no, your son is poisoned. And the reflection of her rearing is why she did that. So, yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would probably be the only person.
Yeah. But I'm not shocked that it was someone on
Yeah.
his side, you know. I'm gonna ask of you
Yes.
that if there's someone listening before we wrap up, there's
Okay.
someone listening to this who is currently in an abusive relationship, situationship, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
verbal, physical, emotional, whatever,
Yes.
what would you say to them?
Mm. I would tell them to value their self-worth, um, to believe that they have and they deserve to be loved the way that they deserve to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
I would tell them that financial strongholds or embarrassment or shame, they do not live in that space with you.
Mm.
And that it's only temporary for a long term investment of a healthy, thriving life. It does not last forever. You can get out of it, even when you think you can't. And the biggest thing walking away is if you want to break the cycle, and in my experience, a hetero relationship, your children experiencing that, value their life more than yours and make a decision, a conscious decision to remove yourself and them. If you know you don't want to see another person's child go through this by the hands of your child, make a decision. That's best for that to not happen.
Mm.
There are several programs. Um, there are several resources. I've helped women escape from California to Arizona. I have helped build GoFundMe's and kept it very minimal with details, but people have supported this woman and her infant. Um, I mean, we've seen on the news time and time again, men or women, because it can go both ways. I never want to
Yep.
discount a man in an abusive relationship,
For
but
sure. For sure.
because it happens and they feel their hand. I mean, it happens a lot in the military too. Um, there are means and there are ways. And if you can for one moment see past yourself for the greater of the situation, know that there is someone equally created to love you the way that you deserve to be loved. And this ain't it. So
That
hurt
this is
pain, love should not hurt in this way.
this is not it. I will definitely be linking to resources, the domestic violence
Yes.
hotline. They
Yes.
have a website that will help you create a personalized safety plan. You can call them
Yes.
24/7 if you need it.
It's
As
anonymous.
yes, it's
Yes.
anonymous. And as I said, I know leaving sometimes is the hardest and most dangerous part, but sis,
Because
brother, yes.
living is so much more worth it.
Yeah, you gotta
Yeah.
take the chance. You gotta take the chance. So, look, I
Yeah.
normally do the breakdown. I'm not gonna do it today,
Okay. No, I
unless you
understand. It's
want
kind of
to.
heavy.
Unless you want to,
Yeah.
but yeah, I feel like that was the perfect note to end on. So,
Yeah.
Amber, if
I
you could,
just, yeah.
yeah, if you could tell everyone where they could follow you on social media.
Yeah.
Again, I will link to the YouTube video. You can watch her whole story because we chopped it up a bit, but you can go watch it in her words and I'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on all social media platforms, whether it be YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at The Ambra Life. And that's AMBRA. So at The Ambra Life. I'm a beauty and lifestyle influencer, native of Baltimore, Maryland. And I enjoy encouraging women to embrace their unique beauty. So I call my audience gems for that very reason. We are all cut, colored, and shine in our different ways, but it's always about shining bright.
Oh, perfect. So I will link those in the show notes. Again, Amber, thank you so much
You're
for
so
being,
welcome, Agent.
yes, courageous and brave and sharing your
Hey.
story. I Truly appreciate it. And I'm glad I finally watched your story in full on YouTube myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know you guys love and care for me. You're probably like, oh my Jesus. Oh. So I just appreciate the support.
All right. Thank you. All right, guys, that is it for this week's episode. I want to thank our guest, Ambra Washington, again for being brave and courageous in sharing her story. And I hope that if you're listening to this and you're in a situation that Ambra escaped, that you too find the courage and strength to leave. Intimate partner violence can take a number of forms, including physical, verbal, emotional, economic, and sexual abuse. We can all do our part by learning more about intimate partner violence and domestic violence and the warning signs through great organizations like the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which I have linked in the show notes. 45% of Black women have experienced intimate partner violence and intimate partner sexual violence and stalking within their lifetimes. You do have options. If you are in need of help or in crisis, please call the 24-hour National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE. That is 1-800-799-SAFE. And as I shared in this episode, I grew up in a household where domestic violence was prevalent, and I thank God every day that my mom was able to leave her abuser. So again, if you're listening to these words, you have options and there are ways for you to seek help and make a safe exit plan if possible. Again, thank you to our guest, Ambra Washington, for sharing her story. And if you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to listen and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, or any other podcast apps that you listen to. Don't forget to leave those reviews too. You might hear your review on the next episode. Follow us on all social media. Share the episode with those you love, those you don't love, those you fucking hate. I don't make these pretty images for nothing, okay? Have a dope ass week. Stay healthy, safe, and sane. Thank you for listening. And remember, the ratchet in me always honors the ratchet in you. Until next time.